Thank you, Madam Chair. If I had my roll call, it'd be great. Commissioner Bradshaw. Commissioner Davis. Here. Commissioner Falcone.
Here.
Commissioner Grisby.
Here.
Commissioner Guardino.
Present.
Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Liu.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez.
Present.
Commissioner Norton.
Present.
Commissioner Tavaloni. We thought he was logged in. Commissioner Tavaloni, are you there? Chair Eager.
Here.
Senator Newman. Assemblymember Friedman. Commissioner Tavaloni, did we hear you?
Here.
Thank you. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we need to do instructions at this time?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome to the March 2022 CTC meeting. For those participating online, please note that because this is a two-day meeting, you will need to use a separate link. You will need to use a separate link to attend the meeting tomorrow. The links can be found on the first page of the meeting's agenda. Please use the questions tab on the webinar if you have questions about this. The Commission's meeting agenda is located on our website at catc.ca.gov. Live closed captioning and American Sign Language translations are being provided on the webinar for this meeting. You can access the closed captioning services through links found on the Commission meetings page, and you should see the sign language translators on your screen in the webinar. Any document that the CTC creates can be translated into any language you need. Simply email us at ctc@catc.ca.gov, and we will have them returned to you as quickly as possible. For our remote presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translations. If you are presenting remotely, we hope that you'll turn on your camera during your presentation, if you have one. For the members of the public, in the room and remotely, we welcome comments from the public as part of each item at this meeting. For those attending in person, please submit a speaker card to the clerk, that's me, in the front of the room, to let us know that you want to comment on an item. For those attending via GoToWebinar, you should see a webinar control panel likely located on the right-hand side of your screen. There you'll find the raise hand feature as well as the questions tab. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as early into the item as you can to give the system time to acknowledge you. Alternately, you may use the questions tab to submit your comment. Please be sure to include the agenda item number you are commenting on. Staff will read the comment on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee participating remotely is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants as they are registered to a specific attendee and can create confusion for staff when making comments. For all of our meeting attendees providing comments, we ask that you please be concise. Please make sure your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translations. Since we often have many speakers, we ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If for some reason we have many speakers on a single topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute if needed. Thank you for joining us today. We know your time is valuable and we appreciate you sharing some of it with us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Doug. And now we'll have a welcome to the region. We had a wonderful tour this morning of the area. Thank you so much, San.
Of course.
And I know we have the mayor here also.
Sure. So my job is to introduce them. First of all, let me just say publicly that you're my favorite transportation commissioner. And second of all, I hope you don't tell, especially the LA folks, you don't tell that to Garcetti or Zaragoza I'm introducing to you my favorite mayor of all times. This one is true because I think he's a young rising star trying to face challenges. God, I don't want to be in his place, but he's facing them heads on. I'm going to introduce him and then I'll come back and talk about a few things. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mayor of San Diego, Todd Gloria.
Thank you. And Mayor, I do have to tell you that he did tell us that privately, so it wasn't just in front of you that you were his favorite mayor.
I like confirmation. I gotta check the information multiple times. Chair, thank you so much for this opportunity and for your kind words about the tour this morning. I know you had a chance to meet with Sandag staff, city staff, including my Director of Government Affairs, Adrian Granda. I hope you enjoyed the visit down in the South Bay. And thank you, Hassan, for the introduction. For the record, my favorite executive director of a regional transportation organization. And Hassan and I hopefully are going to be able to convey to you some of, I think, the good things going on here in San Diego County. Many of you are old friends, and so many of you know about this stuff, but we appreciate the chance to brag a little bit. I do want to note two things. One is my understanding this is your first meeting in person in quite some time, and so thanks for choosing San Diego. I love having you all here. Reminder, our tourist tax is lower than LA and San Francisco, so you should just spend. It's a relative bargain when you're here in San Diego. In fact, it's basically free, so just spend money. And then I also hate speaking in this room because that view is really incongruous with this microphone in terms of your attention. But we want to give you a nice backdrop and show off some of the best of our city. And I'm here on behalf of our chair of Sandag, Mayor Catherine Blakespear from the city of Encinitas, who would like to have been here. I serve as the vice chair. Together, we try and control Hassan as best as we can. We lose most of the time, but it's usually a good thing because you know that Hassan is a force of nature, and we're grateful to have him here in the region, with all apologies to the LA area. Before I go any further, I do want to pause for a moment and acknowledge a longtime friend, Clarissa Falcon, who is here. Clarissa and I have known each other more years than either of us would care to admit. And I'm so pleased to see her on this commission. I hope that you all found already what I know, which is that she's dynamic, she's wonderful, she knows San Diego extremely well, and she's extremely passionate about our South Bay communities, as am I. When you were down the southern part of the city earlier today, that is still the city of San Diego. I know we're not contiguous. They are also part of the second largest city in California. They are very important to the future, as you saw from some of the projects we're advancing, and to have Clarissa's focus on that on this commission is extremely valuable to our future plans as a region. I also want to acknowledge and give honor and thanks to Christine Kehoe for her service on this commission. Some of you may know Christine is, or Chris as we all know her, is San Diego's Harvey Milk. And it's quite literal to say that I would not be standing at this podium if it was not for Christine Kehoe paying bills long ago. Her continued service on this commission is just a testament to her commitment to public service. And so I'm glad that you all got the benefit of knowing Chris, and I hope to see her very soon. So as you heard from Hassan and from staff this morning, we have some game-changing projects in the works down here. It's what I think Hassan and I like to refer to as big city energy, right? We're the second largest city in California, 8th largest in the country, and we want folks to know that. And we have to size up our infrastructure to match that size. Sandag is completely transforming the way that San Diegans get around this great region. We're aiming to make it easier and more convenient for everyone to connect to all the special places that there are here in San Diego. And as you know, we are fortunate to have many, many special places. From building the new port of entry that you saw this morning that will make our border crossings extremely efficient, a unique feature of our community, right? We're proud by national community. The ability to get folks across that border efficiently is important from an economic perspective. It's extremely important from a climate and environmental perspective. And Sandag is working to address that. Moving the Lausanne rail line off the bluffs, finally connecting our region's transit system to the San Diego International Airport. Apologies to those of you who may have flown in today, and the fact that we do have a wonderful light rail system. It's not connected to the airport. We're going to change that. And these rolled up are projects that will benefit everyone in every corner of this county. But it's important to recognize that we can't do this work alone. You all know that extremely well from other lives and other jobs that you have. And it takes all of us, and I mean every single person in this room today. Collaboration with the CTC is absolutely crucial to our region's success as we try and size up these massive projects that will improve quality of life in this enormous region. We can't do it without CTC. And so I'm here to express my sincere appreciation, thanks, and pledge my support for the work that you all will do. For my time in the legislature as a member of the State Assembly, I know this organization is extremely important across the state. To the extent that my office as mayor of San Diego, as vice chair of SANDAG, can be of support to any of you all, my door is always open. And those kinds of partnerships that I think can get this all done. In addition to those partnerships, we aim to answer now how we're going to get the rest of these projects that I just mentioned to you done, how we're going to bring people together in the region to actually accomplish them. It's great to have it in a regional transportation plan. It's far better when you're breaking ground, and my personal favorite is when you cut the ribbon on it. I will tell you that SANDAG is laser focused on delivering these projects, right? We passed a transformative RTP. Now it's time to start building projects. And SANDAG is bringing together partners all across our region to make the decisions that will actually make these things possible for us today, but importantly for future generations. And I think that's probably where I want to conclude, is I recognize a lot of this work that we're doing now, none of us will be the beneficiaries of. These projects take decades to do. I wish it were less, but it's the fact of the matter is many of them take a long time. That's okay. I'm perfectly content with making sure that we get this boulder rolling downhill so that no one can stop it, so that the end result, someday when I leave the home, I'm going to wheel myself onto a fabulous light rail system that gets to every corner of this region, that I'll have full access on my phone to every sort of mode of transportation possible that I need to get about my day. And then I'll do it with air that is clean and an environment that is pristine. That's the work that we're doing. We're not thinking about next year. We're thinking about 2 generations from now. So I'll conclude. You should always say thank you when someone does something nice for you. And so I would be remiss if I did not thank you all for the $23 million TSEP grant funds to help with the construction of La Media Road. Otay Mesa is one of the most dynamic parts of this city. There are attainable housing down there. There's good jobs that are down there. It's an amazing amount of economic investments. There's the international border. Your investment in that project will make that dynamic area even more dynamic. And so as the mayor of the city, I just can't thank you enough for that investment. I look forward to having you all join me when we break ground on that project later this year. So that's plenty. I'm stealing Hassan's thunder. I'm happy to play opening act to the global phenomenon that is the Hassan Akrada Show. But I will tell you, I am so grateful to be able to partner with him to get these big projects done, and keep an eye on this space. We intend to do transformational things during my time as mayor, under my leadership at SANDAG, with our chair, Catherine Blakespeare, and with Hassan. I'm confident we can get it done. So let me turn it back to Hassan. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mayor and Chair, Commissioners. Good afternoon and welcome again to San Diego. If you go to the next slide. As we told you this morning, we're about connecting people. And keep going to the next slide, please. We're about honestly using data, big data, to get to a place where our decisions are data-driven. And I hope we demonstrated to you this morning that it is, at the end of the day, it's about connecting people. We told you the pillars of our thinking, and with the help of Mayor Gloria and our chair, we'll be able to say that we mean social equity and social justice when we say it. We don't just make a statement. Last January, our board adopted an equity statement. This month, we're going to start a free transit pass youth in San Diego because of it. So we're practicing what we preach. Go to the next slide. So 3 years ago, we started to develop a vision for, and to the next slide, a vision for San Diego. In case you're wondering what is this is the city of San Diego. We stole this from National Geographic. They had an article on future cities. I came to my staff, I got actually the National Geographic, I said, let's plan San Diego like this. And they start working, connecting with all these great lines to that white star, which is, we don't know exactly what it's going to be. That's the central mobility hub that we're going to build for San Diego. And finally connecting our airport, rail to airport. And we're one of the few international airports in the world that doesn't have that connection. And building a central mobility hub like we spoke today about San Isidro, this is a larger scale where all rail comes, where we could build housing, retail, where people could come entertain. This is gonna give even a better and more visible character for this great region. Next slide, please. We shared with you keep going next. We share with you the Next one. Okay, the Otay Mesa 2, you saw today. This is thanks to Mayor Gloria. Finally, we're getting some cooperation from Custom Border Protection to fund this. Our plan is to open this September 2024. It's an ambitious plan, but with $600 million already invested, I think we can go back. And thank you for all the funding you made available and for the request that sits in front of you for more funding. And I hope Mayor Gloria and I will have you back when we open this facility. Next slide, please. You also heard about an example throughout the state we call the North Coast Corridor. This is what we mean by complete corridors, one of the 5 big moves. This is where you improve access to highways, you build high occupancy toll lane, which we just opened a segment, we're going to open again, and we're going to convert it to high occupancy toll load. But in addition to that, you double track the rail. In addition to that, you build active transportation. We call it complete corridor, and you deploy technology as much as possible. Next, the next priority is the Los Angeles corridor. I'm sorry we didn't have time to take you there to show you how scary it is and how close the trains are. In the last 3 years, we had to slow the trains down a couple of times because of the rain. We don't want these trains to be swimming in the ocean. Thank you for the TSIP money. We got $100 million to stabilize the bluff, but the plan is to move the tracks off the bluff once and for all. And that becomes one priority for Sandag. And the next one, the next slide, please, is building a central mobility hub for San Diego. And I am grateful again for the mayor for at least saying, yeah, it is difficult. It's going to take a lot of money, a lot of time, but that's what big cities do. They do big stuff, and infrastructure is big stuff. So go to the next couple of slides quickly, and then I want to show you a video, just a couple of minutes video, that really summarizes what the vision for this region is. So could you go to the video?
Takes a moment.
It's not, okay.
Where to?
Let us show you.
To the 10,000 connections that bring San Diego together.
To the people and the places that make this region like nowhere else.
These connections get us to our jobs.
To the homes we live in and the neighborhoods we visit.
But they're much more than that. They're part of a bigger plan.
A transportation plan that gives San Diego more options.
More access and more ways to be together.
What's more is that we're not starting from scratch.
We're taking what's already working and making it better.
With big moves towards new technology, the future is in reach.
So how do we do it?
With big dreams, smart moves, and by including everyone.
It's a plan that will drive us and move us.
But most of all, it will connect us.
For ensuring that you have multimodal transportation ecosystem that includes everything. So we were very impressed. Thank you so much. Keep up the good work. Yes.
Hassan and Mayor Gloria, thank you for your comments and welcoming us to your beautiful city and region. Mayor Gloria, do you have time for a quick question?
From Carl Gordino? Of course I do.
You're very gracious. Your passion and success on issues like homelessness, affordable housing, and housing in general is known throughout our state. How are you and Sandag linking those issues with your traffic and transportation improvements?
Thank you for the question. I would add in our climate policies as well, right? The city has a landmark climate action plan. It will not be achievable without coordination with Sandag. So part of why I wanted to be the vice chair of the board when I came back to local government. It's important to connect these pieces together. From what we're doing, I mean, you can look at the projects that Sandag is advancing. Some of the visual you saw was some of our city's first dedicated protected bikeways that are in the areas that have an updated community plan with significant upzoning that is near existing transit. You see how these things sort of come together. we're moving forward with ambitious housing production measures. We have already implemented Senate Bill 9. We'll be implementing Senate Bill 10 later this year. And again, the question from a lot of constituents who are crushed by the housing crisis, but still skeptical, the answer is, where's the infrastructure? And that's where SANDAG comes in. The updated RTP matches extremely well with that request for infrastructure and where we're actually growing. And the last thing I will say is that under Chair Blakespeare's leadership and with Hassan's help, we've stood up a select committee, if you will, on housing options, where we're looking to take some of what you all have pioneered in the Bay Area of really trying to draw down some additional funds that allow us to incentivize not just the big city of San Diego. Remember, there are 18 cities in our county. Not one of us can solve the housing crisis in our community by ourselves, right? We all have to be rowing in the same direction. Through SANDAG's leadership in housing, this is a relatively new area for SANDAG. I mean, beyond the RENA process, establishing best practices and really incentivizing, putting some money on the table to get these jurisdictions to participate. I think it all just comes together, as you asked, Carl, an RTP that's really visionary, that really provides the infrastructure question, local jurisdictions stepping up with the community plans, the programmatic EIRs, the implementation of Senate bills, all coming together. And of course, the Venn diagram of transportation, housing, that sweet spot in the middle is climate. And that's how we end up meeting our ambitious climate action goals.
And I was heartened to hear you talk about clean air in your initial comments, as well as the father of a 12-year-old daughter with asthma. It is so critical that we think of the global issues around greenhouse gas emissions, but never forget the localized issues around air quality. So thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Any other questions, commissioners? I guess you said it all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Enjoy your time here in San Diego, guys. See you later.
All right, Doug.
Madam Chair, we'll take items 3 and 4 together. Tab 3 is the approval of the minutes from the January 26, 27, 2022 meeting. Tab 4 are the commissioners' meetings for compensation.
I move approval.
Second, Martinez. All those in favor? Oh, do we have to do roll call since we have someone on?
No,
we're
but if
good?
you could give me who you heard made the motion, that'd be appreciated.
I think Commissioner Norton. I was going to say Chair Norton. Okay.
I mean,
And Commissioner Martinez second. All
Thank
those
you.
in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to Commission Executive Director Report. Mitch?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be back in person today. And I'm really happy to be in San Diego, a place I grew up and love visiting still. One of the benefits of having our meetings in person and throughout the state is that we at the commission get to see transportation needs and challenges in each community that we visit. Unfortunately, we haven't had the opportunity to do this for the better part of 2 years. So we're happy to be able to do this again. The tour that SANDAG hosted was already mentioned a couple times. Found it very interesting. I appreciated the update on the efforts to put a suicide barrier on the Coronado Bridge. It's been about half a dozen years since we had at a commission meeting here, some survivors and others who were impacted by suicides come and testify. And we look forward to finding to seeing the progress of that and finding out how we can help implement that important project. With the recent changes in the course of the pandemic and the expiration of the executive order that allowed for an all virtual meeting format, I expect that we'll be meeting in person for all of our upcoming CTC meetings, town halls, interagency meetings, everything we're doing in the near future. Even though we met just 7 weeks ago for our last commission meeting, we have new leaders at several of the state's transportation agencies, as well as one new commissioner, all of whom I'd like to acknowledge. First, Chair Eager, congratulations on your election. I know you'll do an outstanding job as chair. You bring a great deal of expertise to the commission with your leadership on economic development in the Central Valley, and I know this will be an invaluable thing leading the commission in the coming year. Commissioner Gardino, I'm pleased to be working with you again as vice chair and to be having the benefit of all your experience. as one of the longest serving commissioners, as well as your leadership in the business and the public sector. I'd also like to acknowledge our newest member, Commissioner Bradshaw, who's unable to be here today because of a long-standing prior commitment. I look forward to welcoming in person at our April Town Hall meeting. Before I move on to congratulate the new leadership at our partner agencies, I want to acknowledge and thank Commissioners Norton and Alvarado for their service as chair and vice chair over the last 2 years. Commissioner Alvarado retired. I doubt he's spending his retirement listening to commission meetings, but if he is, I just want to put a thank you out there. I really appreciate his support and leadership, not just for his time as vice chair, but the many years he served on the commission. Commissioner Norton, I want to thank you as well. You led us on a steady path during difficult times for the state and helped advance important state priorities for climate and equity in our work. I have a resolution to present to you. And the resolution says, not that file. Whereas Commissioner Hillary Norton served as the chair of the California Transportation Commission from August 12, 2020 through February 28, 2022. And whereas Commissioner Norton provided steadfast leadership to the commission during the COVID-19 pandemic while the commission conducted its business remotely. And whereas Commissioner Norton was an ardent champion for critical transportation projects that address California's climate goals and fix the first needs, strengthen the state's good movement network, and enhance mobility options for all modes of transportation, including active transportation and transit, and create new jobs and economic growth. And whereas Commissioner Norton maintained the commission's commitment to being a sound steward of taxpayer dollars by ensuring transparency and accountability over state and local transportation projects and progress towards meeting the transportation goals established by Senate Bill 1. And whereas Commissioner Norton was unwavering in her commitment to increase the commission's emphasis on equitable outcomes in California's transportation system and oversaw the issuance of the commission's first ever racial equity statement, the creation of an equity advisory roundtable, and the development of an equity advisory listening sessions and an equity advisory committee. And whereas Commissioner Norton partnered with the leadership at the California Department of Transportation and the California State Transportation Agency to advocate successfully for federal legislation to increase funding for transportation and allow California to better meet its transportation needs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the California Transportation Commission extends to Commissioner Hillary Norton its recommendation, its commendation, and gratitude for her service to the people of the state of California and for setting an ambitious vision for the California Transportation Commission during her tenure.
I would like to move approval of the resolution.
Second.
And second, Commissioner Davis, all those in favor?
Aye.
No opposed, right? Okay. It carries. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, you did.
Thank you. Lovely.
Well, that does not end my report. I have much more to say for those of you listening at home. I believe our new transportation secretary is joining us virtually today. Secretary Omashakan, I want to offer my congratulations and say how pleased I was to hear of your appointment. I appreciate our strong partnership we had while you were at Caltrans, and I know that your leadership at Calsta will foster greater collaboration between our agencies. And it was nice to have the opportunity to spend a little time with you at the AASHTO conference in DC a couple of weeks ago. I hope that we can continue to coordinate our future engagement at the federal level. I want to congratulate Stephen Keck as acting Caltrans director. Not all of you know this, but I hired Stephen when he started at Caltrans almost 22 years ago. He was an entry-level analyst, and he told me his goal was just one promotion and to retire early, and I think that was probably about 8 promotions ago. So he did not succeed in that, but I wish you success in achieving many of your other goals. We're fortunate to have you working with us since we have such a strong working relationship, and you're really a bedrock of institutional knowledge at Caltrans. Commissioners, We'll have a staff report on the agenda later today under tab 15 with the update on the state budget. I want to let you know that we're having conversations at the staff level regarding several issues for the May revision. We're very supportive of the governor's proposed influx of general fund revenue for transportation, but we believe there are some opportunities to improve the proposals by leveraging the commission's expertise, experience, and processes. And we continue to seek the full $2 billion augmentation for the active transportation program to help clear the project backlog and to fund ambitious new pilot programs, as well as a $2.5 billion augmentation for transit and rail projects in the state transportation improvement program to address the need for transit improvements across the state. I will keep you updated as our conversations continue. We're planning to hold a short commission meeting the morning of our April 13th town hall to request any needed action or direction on the budget. Commissioners, we have 2 new program adoptions on our agenda, as well as the adoption of guidelines to kick off a call for projects. First, we have the 2022 State Transportation Improvement Program, for which staff recommendations were released 20 days ago. The link to the list of projects recommended is in your book item. They constitute a suite of multimodal investments across California that are going to help us meet our climate goals, make travel safer, improve road conditions, and facilitate goods movement. We did identify a few issues with some projects proposed in the interregional programs by Caltrans. For instance, 2 proposed active transportation projects were safety projects that did not have a clear interregional benefit, and so we believe are better suited for funding in the State Highway Operation Protection Program. We're setting aside the associated funds so that we can work with Caltrans to identify bike and pedestrian projects that relate to the interregional surface transportation of people or goods, or that are capital outlay projects of statewide benefited interest, such as projects that would connect to intercity rail or to larger bicycle and pedestrian networks. Such larger transformative projects are a priority for the state and something that the legislature has been asking us to fund more of. It's imperative that we use our scarce dollars for interregional movement for projects that meet this objective. I'm confident that we'll be able to work with Caltrans to identify projects to use this reserve in the near future. We also had a few rail projects that did not either meet the statutory requirements or requirements in our STIP guidelines. We're also setting aside these funds so that these issues can be addressed and we can program these projects hopefully in the future. We are supportive of Caltrans's efforts to propose more multimodal solutions in the ITIP. Many of those rail and bike and pedestrian nominations did not meet longstanding statutory and guidelines requirements. Following adoption of the STIP, we'll reach out to the units in Caltrans responsible for developing rail and active transportation projects to offer training in these requirements to try to ensure that future submittals are eligible and consistent with the guidelines. We also have the 2022 State Highway Operation Protection Program proposed for adoption on the agenda. The projects in the shop will help us stay on course to meet the SB1 targets for road and bridge conditions, while also adding complete streets features. We will, however, be recommending deferring to our May meeting adoption of the shop guidelines, which are on our agenda, so that we have adequate time to take into consideration the comments submitted by our stakeholders that we just recently received. The comments address issues such as the electronic format of the shop. We think several of the suggestions are reasonable, but we need some additional time to work through the specific language. So we expect that coming back in May. And today we have our proposed active transportation program guidelines on our agenda, which means we'll be issuing the call for projects for the 6th cycle of that program. As for upcoming events, I have a really long list of things to read to you because we have a busy schedule through April. First, on March 24th from 5 to 7 p.m., we'll hold a virtual listening session in partnership with Caltrans and CalSTA. This is the first of 6 initial sessions, each of which will focus on a different geographic area. The area of the focus for the first session is Kern County. We'll hold the second session on March 30 for Lake County, and the remaining 4 sessions will be scheduled in April or early May. On April 7th, we'll have our next joint meeting with the Air Resources Board and the Department of Housing and Community Development to further collaboration on intersectional policies across our agencies. This meeting will be in Rockland, which is just outside Sacramento. On April 13th and 14th, we'll have a town hall in Tulare. This is the first town hall that we'll be holding since the start of the pandemic. I'm very excited to finally be able to continue holding these events. They provide an important opportunity for us to visit more rural and remote communities and for them to showcase to the commission their needs and priorities. And as I mentioned earlier, we're planning a short commission meeting the morning of the 13th to request any needed action or direction on the budget. On April 22nd, we'll have the next Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee. We've not yet finalized the location, but are looking at potentially holding it in Sacramento. The last Technical Advisory Committee was held in February and focused on the implementation of Senate Bill 339. On April 29th, we'll have our Equity Advisory Roundtable meeting. The roundtable will hear updates on our efforts to enhance equity in our program guidelines and on the aforementioned equity listening sessions, as well as plans for the transition to a permanent Equity Advisory Committee. In addition, we continue to hold workshops for our SB1 competitive programs, the schedule for which is available on our website. The last schedule item I want to note is that Caltrans will be holding its annual statewide Fallen Workers Memorial on April 28th at 11 a.m. on the west steps of the Capitol. The Workers Memorial is a time to remember those who lost their lives building, maintaining, and operating California's transportation system. Commissioners, I want to introduce one new staff member who has joined our team since the last meeting. Ken Lopez joined us this past Monday as the Commission's first research data specialist. He'll be supporting the SB1 programming team's increased work and role in transportation data, specifically in the area of goods movement and supply chain. Ken has a bachelor's degree in business finance from Sac State and has spent 11 years in various research and management roles at the California Department of Healthcare Services. And lastly, commissioners, as you know, for the last month or two, Paul Goloszewski has served as our acting Chief Deputy Director while Tanisha Taylor was out on leave. I want to thank Paul for the outstanding work he's done. I also want to thank Justin Behrens, who served as the acting Deputy for Legislation and Finance while allowing Paul, freeing up Paul to do this. Again, he did an outstanding job. That concludes my brief report.
That's it.
And we'll see if I can make it longer next time.
Well, we have a couple questions, so it might be. Commissioner Liu, I believe you had a question.
Me first, Fran.
Question on the report.
Just a quick question. I think we took care of this, but you didn't mention it, so I want to make sure. The Strategic Growth Council and ITS came out with a series of reports on transportation in the last few weeks that I became aware of, and I think I sent them to you. And if I remember correctly, you said it'd probably make a good joint meeting agenda item. Are we going to put that on the agenda for the joint meeting on April 7th?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir. So,
That's all I need.
And we are in the process of going through that report and the 5 associated appendices.
Yes, the appendices, they're really interesting reports.
They are, and I appreciate they had sent the drafts to us, and so staff did have a time to look at them. So we will be having comments and be sending something out to the commission in the near future. In the near future, period. Thank you.
Before your son graduates?
Yeah.
But not before dinner.
Thank you. And Commissioner Inman?
Thank you, Chair. Mitch, a couple of things. This morning we talked about grade separations, and Sandag had talked about the possibility to really improve the transit time from the border to downtown, perhaps cut it in half. So when we look at having increased funding for grade separations, can we really make note and thinking about how those investments can better improve utilization of existing systems? So I was just touched by their suggestion that they could cut that commute time in half by, I think it was 3 or 4 grade separations. So we have some good experience in SoCal with folks who really know how to do grade separations efficiently. So I'm just hoping that we can be really strategic and smart when we look at, for the first time, really having some increased federal dollars in that. So that was just one idea. And then the other ask I have, we also heard on our tour this morning of the Otay Mesa East and the deadline to have that completed by September of 2024, which is just really around the corner. So I would ask that we stay engaged to make sure that we can do anything we collectively can do as transportation partners to help us all achieve that goal, because as we watched, we saw trucks lined up for an estimated 3 miles trying to get across the border. So I think it's for everybody, that's a very important project for all of us. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree about the importance of that project. That's one, as Sandag noted, they have an excellent partnership with Caltrans. And so both the Caltrans district director and Sandag director have my cell number. So I'm sure if there's anything we can do, they will let me know. Regarding the grade separations, I'm not sure what the commission's role in that will be. I would like to think everything we do is strategic and smart. By definition. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. But one of the things that I think is worth having a conversation about is, can we take advantage of what we did in the Highway Rail Crossing Safety Account Program, which was a program that the commission ran from Prop 1B, and rather than reinventing the wheel, perhaps there's an opportunity to run some funds through that. So we'll raise that issue.
Any other questions? Then I will entertain a motion to accept the report. Is it on here?
We're good.
Oh, it says action on here. I was taking it serious.
Yeah, so the action was that the resolution for Commissioner
Oh,
Martin.
okay,
But
all
it's
right.
always an action item in case you really want to tell me something to do.
I heard some telling you things to do.
In general,
Okay.
I take what you guys tell me to do as direction, but if you really want to emphasize it, we can do it in action.
We're good? Okay, I guess we're good. Thank you. So we will move on to commissioner reports. So I guess that's me. First of all, I want to welcome you all and thank you for being here. We said, gosh, that's got to be tough for y'all to say, I have to go to San Diego for a commission meeting. And that beautiful view out the window. Yes, that's going to be difficult all day long to not look out there. But we do want to welcome everyone here and hope that you have a wonderful 2 days. I also wanted to congratulate Acting Director Keck. Welcome.
Thank you.
And good luck. I know the exciting times coming ahead. That's going to be for all of us. So we look forward to working with you. I also want to congratulate new Secretary of Transportation, Elma Shakin. We said we were going arm in arm because he started his day, the first day I started as chair. I do have to tell you all a quick little story though. As Mitch said, we were in Washington, DC at the AASHTO meeting, and Secretary Elma Shakin was a rock star there. People were lined up everywhere wanting to meet him. And I think just because we were from California, we got some of that rubbed off on us because they kept coming up to us saying, oh, you're from California. And certainly it was because of the secretary, but also because of the work that you all do throughout the state of California. Some of the things that were talked about that the people in other states were, I'm pretty sure, jealous of what it is that's going on in the state of California. And with the new money coming from Washington, DC, that's going to go out, it was an exciting time. And it certainly was an exciting time to be in Washington, DC from California. So thank you all and keep up the good work. Some of the good work that's being done here is done by our CTC staff. And it has been said over and over again that The staff of the CTC is the best, I think Hassan will probably say this, of any staff in the state of California. So we're very proud of the work that they do. So thank you all. And I know it's been so difficult during these last 2 years. We were laughing, right? We were all going to go home for 2 weeks. And here we are 2 years later, finally coming out of the hole. So thank you all for going above and beyond to ensure that the work continued during this time period. We also wanted to say during this time, our executive director, Mitch, has gone above and beyond to ensure that his staff is happy and healthy, and making sure that the work that is being done at the staff level is exemplary. And the WTS this year will be acknowledging Director Weiss. He's being honored and awarded the Ray LaHood Award by the Sacramento chapter of WTS. The award recognizes Mitch's contribution in helping the advancement of women in transportation field, advancing and advocating for women in his own organization, and you might look around and see that here. Never in the history of CTC has there been as many women in management positions. Currently, at the CTC, a woman serves as the chief deputy director, and 3 of his 6 deputy directors are women. Additionally, all 6 of the commissioners' funding program managers are women, and 3 of them are women of color. These positions involve significant, oh yes, good. These positions involve significant responsibility over large amounts of transportation funding. WTS will present the award to Mitch on March 24th. We want to say a special congratulations, Mitch, and we're proud to be associated with you. And obviously, if you look at this commission, where it's near and dear to our heart, the work that you do in promoting women in transportation. So please help me recognize. And that concludes my report, unless any other commissioner has a report.
No report, but I would be remiss if I didn't welcome my colleagues and CTC staff to San Diego. I understand this is sort of full circle because, 2 years ago, you were supposed to meet in San Diego, and then we had lockdown due to the pandemic. So it's really heartening to see all of you in person, and that you heard from the region. We have quite the triumvirate with Hassan and Chair Catherine Blakespear from Sandag, and Mayor Todd Gloria, Vice Chair of Sandag, with a special partnership of District 11 and Caltrans. We have a great region here, and I hope you feel the welcome here, and we look forward to a really productive next 2 days, and seeing additional projects maybe next year in person again. But I wanted just to take the moment to welcome you all. And really quick, I do want to say, having the triumvirate, as I mentioned, it makes it easy for us to set the table for us to make decisions. I feel particularly blessed working with such great partners with the region. So appreciate a little bit of time to welcome you all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, then we're moving on. The next is, hopefully we have Secretary Omashakin. Kita. And there's the superstar.
A very, very good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me and see me very well. It's a great honor for me to get a chance to brief this body, the commission, for the first time as Secretary and Cal STA. It's indeed a great honor. I am particularly thankful to Governor Newsom for his appointment I'm looking forward to working with him and many of you here today, listening into this meeting to accomplish the many goals that he and all of us have for the people of California. So I'm excited. I'm honored by this appointment. I also want to say I truly value the relationship that I was able to develop with many of you at the CTC, the commissioners, Chair Eager, Vice Chair Gardino, the rest of the commission, the relationship that we got a chance to develop in my 2.5 years as director of Caltrans. I truly value the work that we were able to do to continue to make the transportation system of the state safer, more efficient, and increasingly more sustainable and more equitable. So I look forward to being able to again do more of this work with you. Chair Eager, you mentioned the fact that California got so much of a warm welcome when we were in DC a couple of weeks ago. And I believe it's in large part because of all the work that we've been doing. That's what is truly getting recognized nationally. The fact that we are truly leaders in the transportation space for the nation, and even in some cases for the world. So thank you again to all the commissioners for all of your work in this space. Also want to thank, I'll be completely remiss if I didn't thank members of the Caltrans team, the Caltrans staff, for the 2.5 years that I got to serve alongside them every single day through some of the roughest, toughest periods that the department's ever faced, including not only the once-in-a-lifetime pandemic, but natural disasters, climate-related disasters at its absolute peak for the state. Like we've never seen disasters at that level before, but the team there kept pushing through with new priorities coming in from the administration and a new set of foundational principles being established by me and other leaders in the department. The Caltrans team absolutely shone through in my period there. So I'm grateful and thankful to them as well. Also want to thank Sandag. Heard my friend Asani Crado speaking earlier there. Wish I could be there as all of you enjoy the beautiful San Diego weather. So thanks to Sandag, Mayor Gloria, Commissioner Falcone, and also Gustavo Delauder, our District 11 Director. Thanks for the hosting today's meeting and the warm welcome that I know everybody there is receiving for the next at this meeting. So next slide. So as Director Weiss mentioned and Chair Eager mentioned, hit the ground running. The very next day after I was sworn in as secretary was in DC with the both of them for meetings and discussions about where we're headed next with this new infusion of federal funding that we're getting, and making sure that it's in alignment with the work that's happening in California. While I was there, I participated on a panel with 3 or 4 other secretaries, I should say, from states across the country, and highlighted our alignment in particular with the Biden-Harris administration's Justice 40 initiative. If you're not familiar with the Justice 40 initiative, it particularly focuses on how to make sure at least 40% of the investment related to climate and sustainability goes to underserved communities across the country. And there's no doubt that we are doing much of that similar work already. I gave an example in Southern California where we're using state money to invest in places of need in underserved communities. That is very much in alignment with this through the Clean California program and additional investments that are going to be made in funding that's coming out from California. But also beyond meeting with the other state DOTs that were present and the ASTO staff and team there. Fortunate to get a chance to meet with some of our California congressional delegation. Met with some leadership staff, but also in particular met with Senator Padilla and got a chance to talk to him about his leadership and interest in freight and the supply chain issues that are that have been challenging over the last several months for California and for the rest of the country. It was interesting because on that particular day that I got a chance to briefly meet with Senator Padilla and his team, he had just wrapped up an EPW committee meeting where he got a chance to question Secretary Buttigieg. And they got a chance to discuss California's leadership on supply chain issues for the country. So it was a good chance to get a follow-up discussion with Senator Padilla. And I know the rest of the country is watching us as we continue to work through the challenges related to the freight and supply chain issue. Madam Chair, I will report to you today that we've got progress, some major progress when it comes to those challenges. Since November, when we were probably at the peak of the challenge, we've seen a 64% reduction in shipping containers that are sitting at ports in Long Beach and at the Port of LA. And that's in large part due to some of you on this commission, but many other leaders across state government. The governor's leadership on this has been critical. GoBiz, Caltrans, CalSTA, many other organizations very interested in seeing that change and working with the ports and the private sector to see the reduction. I mentioned 64% reduction in containers. The port of, well, I'll say the vessels at the San Pedro Bay in particular, at some point in the fall of last year, we had dozens of vessels sitting at the port. And as of last week, we only had four vessels sitting at the port of San Pedro Bay. And again, that's in large part due to a lot of the hard work by many people in California state government and the ports down in Southern California. Next slide. So as we return from, as Chair Eager and Director Weiss, as we return from the nation's capital, one thing that I can clearly report as well is that there's a major buzz in the air about this bill that many people are calling a once in a generation opportunity for transportation funding for the nation. It's the most significant investment that the federal government has put towards transportation in its history, in our history. Some people point back to the Eisenhower Act of 1956 that made the initial big investment. But I think this particular investment is more consequential because of the array of impact that it's going to have beyond just building a highway system, a highway network. What this is going to mean for the environment, what it's going to mean for health, what it's going to mean for equity and livability in many of our states, I think is truly unprecedented. And the alignment as well, the unique alignment with the Newsom administration, the Biden-Harris administration, Congress, the state legislature here, even the CTC, on and on, that alignment is rare and that alignment is unique. So I'm excited. I hope many of you are as well. About the opportunity in front of us to deliver for the people of the state. So as I came on board, CalSTA, led by several members of our leadership staff, and I was able to join the fifth meeting of the CalSTA IJA working group. There are several sub-working groups that have been created that are led by Caltrans, and I was glad to briefly speak to the group, speak to this working group about the efforts that are, the many efforts that are underway in the different working groups. But their role, some people listening in today, your roles, your voice in helping us finalize a framework for California to make sure we spend this money prudently and definitely in the right places will be very important. So thank you to everybody that's been participating in these working groups. For a summary of the meetings, please go to the CalSTA website. We're updating that website very frequently and trying to make sure that it is as user-friendly as possible. But you can see, if you just do a search for that, the words highlighted there at the bottom, you should be able to land on that page where you can see all the new information that's coming in from the federal government and that we are finalizing as well at CalSTA. Next page. So I mentioned the unprecedented alignment between California state government, all the work that we are doing as a group, and the federal government. And part of that alignment is clearly shown in the governor's budget that came out roughly 2 months ago. One of the things that is clear that the governor will continue to highlight and prioritize is the climate agenda for the state of California, because we are absolutely on the front lines of this challenge. But part of the governor's proposal is a $9.1 billion overall transportation infrastructure package, and also a $2.3 billion supply chain investment package. Under the $9.1 billion package, there's investment that's been set aside for ZEV transit, zero emission vehicles or in transit, freight, rail, and active transportation as well. Significant investments there, all in alignment with CAPTI, the plan that CalSTA put out in the summer of last year that's going to continue to guide the investments for transportation in the state. But also, as I mentioned prior, $2.3 billion to address the supply chain challenges we have as a state. At some point, we have to shift gears from the reactionary work to address the backlog that we have at the ports and shift gears into what the future of goods and freight movement will be in the state. And this investment proposed by the governor, this $2.3 billion, I believe, helps us shift gears towards that future for goods movement for California and ultimately the rest of the country as well. So the governor's proposal contains multiple points of alignment with IJA, as I've mentioned, and we look forward to continue to see how we can make these investments happen. Also want to mention briefly the fact that the commission has shown its clear leadership on this issue. There will be listening sessions related to the investments that we'll be making on the supply chain front next month. And I look forward to hearing the outcomes of those listening sessions as all of us continue to work towards addressing this critical issue. Next slide. So earlier this month, the deadline came about for the TIRCIP program for communities to turn in their applications, and we received a total of 50 project applications requesting nearly $4 billion for this 2022 cycle, which is 8 times, I think it's important to highlight, 8 times what is likely the investment that we're going to make in this particular area. We anticipate announcing awards at some point in June through a lot of collaboration with, of course, with Caltrans and the CTC and many other stakeholders across the state. But $500 million, $500 million out of a $4 billion request shows how much of a demand and interest there is to continue to make transit and multimodal related investments in California. And also important to highlight the fact that the guidelines for the TIRCIP program have been revised and updated to be in alignment with many of the policy issues that were identified in CAPTI. So we look forward to this critical program being rolled out in June, but it's exciting to see that many 50 projects and over $4 billion were requested as the applications came in this month. Next slide. So, and I believe this may be my last slide here. As many of you know, one of the foundational principles for my tenure at Caltrans was safety. Amongst that was equity as well, and climate action. And as I make this transition to the secretary role, I plan to continue to make this a flagship issue for our state. As I was on my way out, we were fortunate due to a lot of hard work by many at Caltrans. I was able to sign a director's policy that commits the department, commits the state to a safe systems approach that reaffirms our vision to reaching zero fatalities in less than 30 years, in 28 years. I know some people, again, I will mention, think this is a lofty goal and one that's possibly not achievable. I can attest to you today, and will continue to attest to the fact that it is very much achievable. There are countries across Europe that have adopted these same principles and have been able to drop their fatalities by 50 and 60% over a 10, 15-year period. So to try to have a goal that shoots for this in the next 28 years is something that I believe that we can accomplish in the transportation community for California. Part of the reason why, clearly, is we continue to see the numbers go in the wrong direction. NHTSA's final report came out for 2020, and we had nearly 39,000 people killed in traffic accidents in the country in 2020, the year the pandemic started. The highest number that we've seen as a country now in 13 years. So much work to be done here. This is sobering data and sobering information to see. You would expect that in a period where there was less driving, we saw significant drops in driving, that you would see possibly reductions in serious injuries and fatalities. Unfortunately, that was not the case. So we've got a lot of work to do. I think the policies, the investments, the funding investments that we need to have in place to continue to send us in the right direction, those are finally coming in place. We have to implement them. And I believe in the coming years, we will start to see a difference. Hopefully start to see a difference in this particular area. So I hate to end things on a sobering note like that, but overall, I will say, as Chair Eager, the Chair Lady mentioned, we are leading the nation on many fronts in safety, and issues related to our high level of interest in equity and wanting to make a difference there, becoming more sustainable, climate investments that we're making as a state. People are looking to us. People are looking to us for what we are doing. And I'm honored to continue to have the opportunity to serve alongside all of them with this work that we have ahead. So thank you for another opportunity, my first opportunity to present to the commission as secretary. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Liu, you had a question or comment?
Yes, I do. Secretary Omashakin, I'd just like to personally congratulate you for that appointment, but I always had questions for you as Caltrans director, and I have a question for you now. And it's a little bit off base, but I think you'll get what I'm asking about, because Governor Newsom recently signed an executive order requiring state agencies to terminate contracts and agreements worth $5 million or more with any companies or individuals subject to U.S. sanctions associated with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I'm just wondering whether Caltrans or CalSTA has any such contracts and whether we've approved that kind of money, and whether you're trying to implement that executive order and can do that It's obviously would be kind of complicated to figure out. But if you could give me a status update on that, I would love to hear it.
No, very, very good question, Commissioner Liu. I failed to mention the fact that even though we have this excitement that I mentioned about this infrastructure bill across the country and the great opportunity in front of us, people are also struggling with the geopolitical conflicts that are going on across the world, and as well some of the impacts related to inflation that many people are facing, with gas prices in some places close to $6 a gallon. So despite the excitement, there's nevertheless all this other these other things that are circling around us that many of us are challenged with, which is related to your question. And yes, the governor did ask that. I do not have the latest update on where our CalSTA departments are in identifying those types of contracts, but that's something we can report back to you, to the commission specifically, on what we've identified through all, not just Caltrans, but all the CalSTA related departments, possibly, and whether or not we're going to be able to move forward with freezing or canceling those contracts as the governor has requested. But I do not have that information currently with me.
Okay, thank you. And I assume you'll just come to us and let us know if you need our help and cooperation in fulfilling that executive order. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Liu.
Thank you. And I don't see any other questions. I did want to thank you, Secretary Omashakin. When we were in Washington, D.C., you reminded us in your speech to the whole room is that sometimes we get caught up in here's all these billions of dollars we have to put here, and here's the engineering on how we're going to build this or fix that. But you brought it back to it's really about people. You brought it back to we have to remember everything that we're doing in this state is to help the people of California get safely from one place to another and do it equitably. So I wanted to thank you. And I think the next day, Secretary Buttigieg, I think he just copied what you said, but he did also have that same theme of let's make sure that we remember that as we all move forward in looking at what we fund and how we funded it, that it is about the people of the state of California. And so we really appreciate you being in that position that you are now with those priorities. So thank you so much.
Chair Eager, thank you. You're too kind, but I think all of us recognize and understand how we can get caught up in all the big responsibilities we have and the cylinders of excellence that we like to create, as some say, to do our siloed work, but we have to drop those and say, like, what's the best thing for folks? What's the best thing for people that we're here to serve? And so honored to get that chance to do this for the people of the state. So thank you, Chair Eager.
Thank you. No other questions? Oh, we have one more. Commissioner Falcone?
Yeah, Secretary Omashakin, first of all, congratulations. Wonderful to see you in this position and well-deserved. I remember, when I was working in the legislature, one of the most sobering events was honoring, your workers that lost their lives on the highways. And you provided a very sad, I think, statistic of the increase in fatalities. I hate to ask this question, but how many of those are your workers, and what can we do as a commission to, help you with protecting your workers on the highways?
Commissioner Falcone, very, very good question. Fortunate that in my tenure for 2.5 years as director, we did not lose a single Caltrans employee.
That's great.
And that is rare. And it's the longest period in more than 50 years, I believe, that's happened. the longest stretch, a 3-year stretch without a single fatality of a Caltrans worker. But I will say, nevertheless, that we did lose contractors. I spoke to this at several commission meetings, the fact that we were losing contractors, and we consider contractors a part of the Caltrans family, even though they're not employed by the state. They're doing work for the state, so they're part of our team, if you will. So there's a big challenge here. We've commend several people at Caltrans, from Mike Keever to Ray Hopkins and many others, who immediately circled the wagons and try to figure out how we can come up with additional initiatives and protect our workers. So it's something we need to continue to highlight, because, and I've mentioned this before, the number of projects that we're going to see on our transportation system are about to increase. With SB $1, with new federal funding, with the self-help counties doing additional work for the next 5 years or so, we're going to see more work than we actually see currently. We may think it's a lot right now. It's going to be even more work on the highway system in the coming months and years. So how to continue to make sure our workers, our team members are protected will need to continue to be a priority. But no Caltrans workers specifically lost in the last 3 years, the longest stretch in several decades.
That's wonderful to hear. Let's keep it that way.
Amen to that. Yeah.
Commissioner Davis?
It's on? Oh, okay. I didn't see the green light. So, Director Omashak, and I wanted to thank you for your commitment to the issue with the contractors, because it's not actually a contractor that is the fatality, it's the workforce of that contractor. Members of my union in particular, members of other unions. And, we'd exchanged information with Caltrans, with my National Health and Safety Fund, where we've got hygienists, industrial hygienists who work on this issue every day. And I know that new technologies are coming out that I think are going to be sampled to help protect the Caltrans workforce, but at some point in time when that can transition over to the contractor workforce, everybody should be able to go home at the end of the day to their families. And but I do appreciate the work that you partner with the commission and with certain organizations with on this, and look forward to working with Mr. Keck as we move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Secretary. We look forward to seeing you in person.
Yes, my apologies for not being there in person. I'm looking forward to the next hybrid meeting and being amongst the entire team. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. So next we will have Acting Director Keck.
Very good, thank you. First, I'd like to thank Executive Director Weiss and Chair Eager and Secretary Omashak for your welcome today. I will say this of Mitch, when we first met, he said he wanted to be Executive Director of CTC one day, and fulfilled his dream. So in all honesty, though, this is a pretty humbling experience for me, and I've been a part of this community for a very long time now, and I didn't expect to be asked to act in this capacity. So this is something that I'm very honored to do for the department. And true to his character, Secretary Omashak, in our brief time together before he went off to DC right after I was appointed, he told me it's all about the people. Right, so that's not a message that he just says when he's out in public. It's true, and that was his biggest piece of advice for me, is it's all about the people. So I'd like to start my presentation today by highlighting, if we can go to the next slide, one of the very special people at Caltrans. I'd like to tell you the story of Rudy Contreras, who is currently a guardrail maintenance supervisor in District 6 in Fresno. And before I tell you a little bit about Rudy, I want you to know that Rudy wants me to tell you this story. And that's what makes him so special. In 2011, Rudy was at a very low point in his life. he had donated a kidney to his father, and as a result, he was not able to get clearance to return to his former job, not with Caltrans. And that really kind of led to a downward spiral, if you will. He started drinking. It was a very bad time for him. He ended up losing his job. He lost his family, and he ended up losing his home, and ended up even worse with a 3-year prison sentence for an assault charge. So that's the down part of the story. What makes this a truly special story is that 18 years into his 3-month sentence, he was hired by Caltrans as a maintenance worker through the parolee program. And Rudy credits that break for saving his life. Rudy took advantage of the training that we offer, and he received counseling. He received work experience and interview skills. He had a chance to redevelop his work ethic and really put his life back together, which he did, absolutely. And in 2020, Rudy, well, I should mention that he was, of course, hired on permanent with Caltrans in 2014, and he came out top in his field of 26 candidates for that job. He's been promoted twice now into supervisory positions, and he's currently, as I mentioned, the guardrail maintenance supervisor in District 6. And I'm going to quote Rudy. He says it's hard to put this into words, but his quote is pretty amazing to me. He says, "This place I love, Caltrans, is the saving grace for me and my family. I will never stop giving to Caltrans. It didn't just change my life, it saved my life."
Oh, wow.
And all I can say is thank you, Rudy, for being really something special. You're bringing a message of hope to everybody and representing the very best that Caltrans has to offer. Frankly, I'm honored to be able to tell your story in my very first meeting at CTC as the acting director. So thank you, Rudy, as our employee highlight of the month. We go to the next slide. I'd like to do a few staff announcements, starting with Donna Berry, who I see back there somewhere. Hey, Donna. So Donna, I'm very pleased to announce, has been appointed to the acting chief engineer at Caltrans, also the deputy director for project delivery. That was effective February 14th. Donna has over 25 years of experience in Caltrans. She's worked at headquarters in the North region in structures design, financial programming, and of course, most recently as the head of the Division of Project Management. Welcome, Donna, to your new role. You're going to enjoy it, I hope, as much as I'm enjoying this one. Next slide, please. And backfilling in behind Donna while she's acting is Jeff Wiley, who's acting division chief of project management. I love that picture, Jeff. It looks like he's about to get up to something not good, but Jeff has over 30 years of experience at Caltrans, working in several areas, including bridge design, building design, program management, Division of Engineering Services, and traffic ops. Office of Civil Rights, and most recently as the Assistant Division Chief for Project Management. Welcome, Jeff, to your new role as well. Going to the next step. So my safety program update, I'm following the same pattern that then Director Omashakin would give. He would give updates on specific topics, safety being, of course, number one. I think very rightfully Secretary Omashakin already took credit for this. I certainly can't. The new director's policy on road safety that was adopted on February 15th. Secretary Omashakin already briefly went over this. I'll just add on to it a little. This policy commits the department through adopting the safe systems approach to 3 main pillars. One is a safety mindset that prioritizes road safety, to prioritize the elimination of fatal and serious injury crashes, and to eliminate to eliminate race, age, ability and mode-based disparities in road safety outcomes. Essentially, it shouldn't matter who you are, you should be safe on a transportation system. We can go on to the next slide briefly. Give an update on what we're doing for climate, specifically relying on electrifying the transportation sector as a key component in our strategy for combating climate change. Last month, as part of the IIJA, the federal administration released details on a new funding program through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This program is called the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, or NEVI. It comes in two parts. One is a formula part that will be distributed to each state. California is expected to receive about $384 million over 5 years. And there's also a much larger pot of $2.5 billion nationwide for discretionary grants to help states electrify their systems. Caltrans and agency have been working together with our partners at the California Energy Commission and the Public Utilities Commission, who are the designated state agencies responsible for leading EV charging infrastructure in the state. And they're working together to develop a infrastructure plan that's required as part of the IIJA rules. And we look forward to continuing to work with them, with our local and regional partners, with other state partners and the private sector to develop that plan, which is required, I believe, by August of this year. It must be complete before any of the IIJA funding can be obligated to projects. Go on to the next slide, please. For our equity update this month, I'd like to relate that we're celebrating the 2nd anniversary of our Race Equity Action Plan, known as the REAP. We were one of the very first in the nation to have such a plan. The REAP really provides a plan for us moving forward for equity and outlines our milestones moving forward. It's a living document that we continue to update. It's not something that we just finished and put on a shelf. It's something that really is working into what we're doing at Caltrans. And along those lines, we're moving forward with our releasing our Beta Equity Index, which we're going to be kicking off this spring. We are ongoing joint efforts with the equity listening sessions, which are currently underway. We've participated in internal training and are getting ready for 2 more sessions coming up later this month, one on March 24th in Kern County and one on March 30th in Lake County. And you'll hear an update on our progress in that area later in your agenda from our Deputy Director, Jeannie Ward-Waller. Not last but not least, the Caltrans Office of Race and Equity has recently kicked off an IIJA sub-working group on equity to discuss opportunities that are inherent in that landmark legislation. Next slide, please. And this month, instead of a project highlight, I wanted to highlight the Transportation Asset Management Plan. This plan is required under federal law. And California was the very first state to develop a comprehensive transportation asset management plan in 2020. And we are held out as basically the shining example in the country as how to do a transportation asset management plan. It must be updated every 2 years. And today you'll hear about the 2022 update to this plan. It is the culmination of more than a year's worth of collaborative effort between us and our local partners and other state partners. Basically, it will lay the path forward for managing the transportation system moving forward. And so you'll hear more about that later in your agenda from Michael Johnson. In the next slide, please, I'd like to end on a little bit of a somber note. And as I close today, I want to honor a true transportation champion and a legend in the transportation community, and that is Heinz Eckermann. The sad news of his passing last week impacted many of us, if not all of us. Heinz was a staunch advocate of and for the transportation community. He provided Californians with more than 6 decades of dedication to transportation. 33 of those years were with Caltrans. He started in 1955, and very quickly it was obvious he was going to be somebody. The picture of him on the right was taken in 1958, and already he was in the newspapers for what he was doing. He didn't do anything small. When he retired from Caltrans in 1988, he wasn't done, and he started a second 33-year career by founding the California Transportation Foundation. So I think we all know CTF. If we don't, you all should know CTF. Their mission is summed up with 3 simple words: recognize, remember, and educate. Heinz started this up. He had more to give. He was the chair for a very long time. But essentially, his dedication to transportation community leaves a lasting legacy that I think is unmatched. Every day that we do our work, whatever specific corner of the community we're working in, we are honoring the work that this remarkable man has done. And so I'd like to just say that Heinz will be missed. And if it is not out of order for the Director of Transportation to ask this, if we could adjourn in his memory, that would mean something to, I think, all of us. Thank you. And that ends my Director's report today.
Thank you. I don't see we have any questions, but I don't think that's very fair, Commissioner Liu, that you, okay,
I
good.
always have a question for somebody. Actually, this is a follow-up question for when you weren't in this role. But at our last meeting, I did ask then Director Omashakin about these projects that are under development somewhere in the process and may be inconsistent with our climate safety and equity goals. And he assured me that there was a review going on and that we should expect some information at some point in time. I was just wondering if I could follow up on that just to keep it fresh.
Yeah, certainly. So those discussions are still going on between Caltrans and our partners, as well as within Caltrans. We'd be more than happy to come and brief the commission at a future commission meeting.
Thank you. I'd appreciate if we could do that.
Thank you. Next, we will have FHWA, California Division Administrator, Vincent Mamano.
Good afternoon, everybody. First off, I want to thank you for leaving me food.
You got there.
I don't know, it's a little salad, chicken salad. My mother always said, don't talk with my mouth full. So if you all would just wait a few minutes, I'd appreciate it. Not exactly sure where that is. San Diego mayor or somebody else. That was the Don Caesar. I'm not taking it to him. He's going to have to come back and get it himself. I cannot be held responsible for that. First off, several congratulations, Chair and Vice Chair. I want to congratulate you on your roles. And thank you, ex-Chair. I enjoyed working with you in that role, and I look forward to working with you in your role. Congratulations to Tokes. Oh, wait, I forgot. I heard Douglas say at the beginning, talk slower. I'm from DC, all right? I don't know how to talk slow. So for sign language, I'd like to apologize for the person doing the sign language. Most of my stuff's not important anyway. But congratulations to Tokes Omashakin as the secretary. Thank you to David Kim in his role. It was a great relationship there. I've been blessed with, ever since they created the California State Transportation Agency, I've been blessed with a great relationship with the secretaries from Brian Kelly, Brian Annis, and David, and now Tokes. So I appreciated that. And congratulations / Stephen, in your role. And Chair, you had mentioned that when you were in DC for AASHTO, that, Tokes is a little bit of a big deal there. And I had these words to Steve, and I've given these words to every new director of Caltrans when they come into the role. And when you go at the AASHTO and you go to the AASHTO meeting, and for those of you who don't know, AASHTO is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials. It's all of the state DOT directors around the country. And if you are sitting around the table, as I told Stephen this the other day, when you're sitting around that table and you're looking around and you're wondering who the biggest player in the room is, take a selfie, because that's you. Because California is the biggest player in that room. People are watching California. Stephen, you talked about the TAMP, the Transportation Asset Management Plan. There's states around the country that are not sure how they're going to deal with resiliency, and California has it in there. And they're the first ones in the country to do that. And Stephen's accurate in that our headquarters is showing, they lift it up and go, hey, everybody, this is how you can do it. So congratulations to that. A couple other things I just want to comment on. You know, the Tokes talked about, or you were here where we're talking about the safety of the workers. And I always appreciate how Caltrans looks at that. I work a lot with the AGC, Association of General Contractors, and others. And I appreciate how Caltrans says everybody out there are our people. I appreciate that Caltrans is having a focused investment on the safety of their people, and that's everybody in the construction industry. There's been costs a little bit more money to make sure everybody's safe. There's going to be a lot more. The roads are going to start filling up again, and there's a lot of money coming out there for construction. So there's going to be a lot of construction out there. So I appreciate the investments and the care that goes into that. And I know the construction industry appreciates something they've been fighting for. And the last several directors of Caltrans have really taken that to heart and found ways to work on that. They've had safety summits. Lori Berman, I think Lori may still be here or was here earlier. Lori was the first one to do a safety stand down. And then they had safety summits ever since then. So Lori said, all right, stop, shut down every project. There's going to be a safety meeting on every single project in the state. And then she put together a safety summit, and we just had our 4th, 5th, or 6th one ever since then. So, I was talking to Lori. I called Lori during that summit and said, if you're wondering what legacies look like, or if you wonder if you have a legacy, that's a pretty cool legacy. That's something you started and it's still going on, and it's about safety. Let's see. That's right. There's a legislation that just got passed, the bill. I'm not sure if y'all heard about we're calling it bill. Y'all go IIGA or whatever else. I'm sticking with bill. It's easier. But I'll go over some of the things that have just come out in the funding on that. But I just wanted to share, while everybody had been talking, I was hearing Tokes talk, I was hearing other people talk earlier. I pulled up in an old email that I had that was talking about the policies on the implementation of the of the new legislation. So this is this administration's policies on the implementation of it. And I heard all of this said today already. So there is no other state that's lined up better. It makes my job a little easier so I don't have to convince anybody that this is it. But I just wanted to share it. And the secretaries talked about this, our secretaries talked about this, and our deputy administrator. It's making our nation's roads safer, making our transportation systems cleaner, more accessible, and more resilient to climate impacts, and enabling all Americans to share in the benefits equitably. And I heard every single one of those things earlier, between Stephen and the new secretary. So I just something that's kind of nice to see that those things line up. Like I said, my counterparts in other states, when they read that, they may not get the same reception. So thank you to the effort that you put into that. So we just had our omnibus bill. So the legislation passed, but we didn't get our appropriations, right? So we were under continuing resolutions. Here's a couple dollars, here's a couple dollars. We've just recently, March 11th, we got our year's appropriation, came under an omnibus spending bill. And that was after 3 continuing resolutions. So that's a full year 2022 funding. And that's all the new money. So we're looking at about a 20% increase. We were getting about $4 billion a year. So it's almost, and then now we're at 4.9 billion right now. And that's not including oh, this is the regular formula money. This is not including some of the other things that are being put in. So there's a fair amount of money that's going to be available. So we got to be ready for it. But a couple of the new programs that are now open are the Protect program. That's coming from the Highway Trust Fund. The Carbon Reduction Program. That's also from the Highway Trust Fund. And then from the general fund is the National Electric Vehicle Formula Program. So some of those things that we weren't allowed to make available until we got our appropriations for the year, it's all available now. I talked about the increases in the core programs, and that's our NHPP, STBG, HSIP. So I get to say all these letters because I'm not going to tell you what they are because it's job security for me. You all don't know what they mean. I know what they mean. The rail highway grade crossings, we talked about that earlier. CMAC, Metropolitan Planning, National Highway Freight, Carbon Reduction, and the Protect program. So that's one of our new discretionaries. There's also in that appropriations, they're calling them congressional directed highway projects. May have heard them before as earmarks. There's 46 congressionally directed highway projects that came here to California in that latest appropriations. In addition to that, there's a California planning project, 19 California transit projects, and I think there's a couple other that went to airports too. So there's a fair amount of funding that's coming separately under those congressionally directed projects also. So we've got a lot going on here with the federal funding. We've got a lot. Again, it's something I appreciate the partnership that we have. I want to point everybody to our federal highway website. Keep an eye on that. Anytime there's anything new that's coming out, for instance, there's the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the RAISE grants. That expires on the 14th of April. I think that is 14th of April. So that's So if you look at the Federal Highway website, there's a thing on the funding, and there's a thing on the corner that's got anything that new comes out that's related to the bill is listed there. So it's got all the new, the electric vehicle program, all of those things, the bridge funding, all of those things all came out in that. The other thing that I just want to remind everybody is there's going to be a lot of different players that aren't our traditional partners. There's a lot of opportunity for locals, tribes, and I want to encourage everybody to continue to coordinate with tribes, to consult with tribes. I've said this 1,000 times. I always appreciate this venue to say it. You shouldn't be handing a tribe something to comment on. They should be at the table with you while you're developing it. So I appreciate, I know San Diego is one of the examples of how to do it. There's a lot of great outreach here with Sandag that they do with tribes. But we've got 109 tribes here in the state of California, number 2 in the country, by a lot, number 2 in the country. And it's important to make sure that they are part of the discussion. They're at the table. I know Caltrans has a Native American advisory group that they work with, which I think is great. It's one of the few in the country that are like that. But anyway, that's all I have. If there are no questions for me, thank you. Darn it, I tried.
Sorry.
I tried.
Commissioner Norton.
Well, can I eat now? Eat now?
I wanted to thank you for all of the partnership that you have brought as we've been working through COVID-19 especially, and the challenges that we faced. And you're right, Bill has a lot of new provisions that can be very, very groundbreaking, including the Justice 40 provision. And so with 40% of the funds going to communities of need, and you knowing that the CTC has been very focused on equity, I wanted to get some understanding about how Justice 40 and the highway programs are going to be administered. So, because there are many people who are asking, should it be serving communities? Does the highway need to go through the community? How are you weighing that? Is it one that where communities of need are going to be traveling on the highway, and so that entire highway should count? Or is it only the parts of the highway that count within the communities of need?
So as I've failed you the last time you asked that question, a different question, I said, I don't know that answer, which I don't know that answer now. But I think it's important to not know that answer now. I really do, because I think there's some evolution in that. There's some understanding, because I think somebody might say, well, that project shouldn't count because it's a highway that doesn't, it's not in that community. Well, but that project serves that community. And I think those are the important things to recognize. There's a great focus on equity, on inclusion. So I think that's what you're going to see in the environmental process. A lot of that stuff is a lot more discussion on. One of the things our deputy administrator talks about is during NEPA, it talks about, we've really focused on the environmental impacts. It also talks about social impacts. And I think there's a greater focus now. I don't think we haven't been disregarding the social impacts, particularly in the last several years. But I think there's a greater focus now on the social impacts to make sure that they are carrying the similar weight that the other environmental impacts have. So the answer to that question is, I believe it's going to be, it depends. It depends on it. And I think that's the right answer, because I think we need the communities to help identify what is helpful to them, right? So I appreciate that you're talking about it. It might not be the road that's in their community. It might be something that allows them access to something else.
Or the transit that runs along that road.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Well, thank you, because I think I've been talking to a lot of communities who are very, very interested in this funding, and certainly California should be qualifying for a lot of those funds.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Right.
so this is helpful to know. And is there any place where there will be some other hearings or avenues for people to kind of provide you that feedback, other than the environmental process, which seems somewhat slow considering how quickly people perceive things to be moving with BIL?
Right. So I think there's the planning process, the environmental process, and I think those are the biggies, right? I mean, those are once you're past the environmental process, you're building it now, where there's still opportunity to affect the project while it's being built. But I think there's going to be some more guidance in that's going to be coming out to help inform us on where those opportunities are. But it's very interesting. It's kind of a different approach or different thought, so I think it's this, like Toke said, this is groundbreaking legislation. It's a once in a generation legislation. It's talking about a lot of things that we haven't talked about before. We've done and worked on it, but there's a lot more discussion at a lot higher level on all these things. So
thank you for helping us get through that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Federal Aviation Administration update from Mark McClarty.
You just did.
Say good afternoon. How do I follow that? Well, first of all, I want to thank CTC for inviting me here. I've been in my current position actually since 2003. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, just so you know a little bit about who I am. And I really have a very strong interest in kind of working with the state of California moving forward. I was very impressed listening to the things I heard earlier today. I want to apologize for being late to the party, but I'm here now, and I thank you for inviting me. So let me talk a little bit about my position. So my position, I'm the director for the Airports Division for the Western Pacific region, and that encompasses California, Nevada, Arizona, Hawaii, and then on the Pacific. We go as far as American Samoa, Guam, Northern Marianas Islands. We even work with the countries in Micronesia who used to be trust territories. So it's a pretty big area, geographical area. And I'm based in El Segundo, so I live in California, so I have a personal interest in working with California. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some opportunities that I see. Some of the programs that we're responsible for, that I'm responsible for. So understanding that headquarters, DC, is policy, I'm implementation. So I'm responsible, my organization is responsible for the federal funding that we provide in this part of the country, environmental reviews, airport planning, airport operations, safety, a lot of the things where airport meets community. So that's kind of our role, that's kind of our task. And I'm gonna go through some things today, but what I really hope that you get as a takeaway are two things. I'm gonna put them in two buckets. One is an opportunity for a better improved state-federal partnership. And the other one is an opportunity to work more strategically together to try to align both federal and state priorities, which typically align, but it's not happening as well as it could. And that's what I want to kind of go through today. So I'm going to go through a lot of stuff, and that's kind of the takeaway I want you to really hear when you hear where I'm coming from. So I got a presentation. I'm going to put the stuff up because there's things that you can look at, but I'm going to talk off it. So a couple of things. So kind of what I want to follow is just a general overview of federal funding available to airports in California. Just in case you don't know, most of you probably do know what's available. I want to talk about the California airport funding history, which, by the way, I think can be improved. It needs to be improved, but some things have to happen to get to that point, which I want to talk about, which gets us to lost opportunities. I think there's lost opportunities you should be aware of. And I think the last thing is opportunities for self-help. Now, before we get to the next slide, I just want to say, so many of you know Amy Choi. She came here with me, and she used to work for Caltrans as the division chief for aeronautics. And I really want to thank her because I've been having conversations with Caltrans Aeronautics, and we've been trying to work together on all of this, and it took me a while to figure out and understand the California structure, and Amy helped me understand that. And it just so happened that both of our priorities aligned, and we're happy. We kind of stole her from California. But I'm really looking for her to kind of help make sure we kind of bring this thing over the finish line. And so that's kind of why I have her here as well. All right, thank you. Next slide, please. So this is going to fall under the category of airport layout, the Airport Improvement Program 101. So this is our major federal funding program. About $3.5 billion is allocated. Money comes in two different buckets. There's entitlements, which basically are state apportionments, which each state gets based on formula. Non-permanent entitlements, which the smaller airports get based on formula. Passenger entitlements, which the larger airports get based on passenger counts, and again, formula, statutory formula. And then cargo entitlements. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in California in those areas. The other bucket, probably the most important bucket, is discretionary. This is the money that FAA have the discretion to spend money on. This is where I can help you. If you let me help you, help me. So there's a couple of set asides in that by statute. There's some money set aside for noise compatibility and other type of environmental improvements. I know there's some interest on that. Military airports programs, and then there's certain categories of airports that we have discretion to spend money on. So most within the world of AIP, typically the entitlements are not enough, and what we do is we supplement the entitlements with discretionary to try to fulfill and achieve whatever we're trying to achieve in terms of projects. Okay. Next slide. Next bucket. This is something that Congress appropriated in 2020. It's a supplemental appropriation. It's hard to say that to AIP, and basically it's 100%. So while AIP has a federal share, which requires a state local match, and for AIP, the state local match in California ranges between 95%. So we will provide 95% for some airports. Actually, there's only two in California that's 95%. Most of the smaller ones are 90%. And it can go as high as 75% for the larger airports. So while AIP has a match requirement, supplemental is 100%. So this was money that was actually appropriated to help supplement AIP. And we expect for this year to close out the supplemental, or next year to close out the supplemental, but this year we're expecting about nationally about $545 million. $545 million. And this is competitive. This is all competitive, so it's nationally competitive money. Next one. Everybody's talking about Bill. So So for airports, again, buckets. About $25 billion total for aviation. $5 billion of that is going to what's called the airport terminal project program, and that's money set aside to help airports build their terminal buildings. That's the front door for most airports. There's different matches on that. For the larger airports, 80%. For the smaller airports, 95%. The NOFO went out, I believe, on that just recently. I don't have the exact date. I can probably get it for you. That's about $5 billion. Then there's the Airport Infrastructure Grant Program. That's about $15 billion nationally. California got an allotment, I'm sure you know that, of about $294 million, $295 million. Similar to AIP, there's a match associated with that, similar to the AIP match. And then there's the third bucket is going to go to our air traffic organization, and that's to cover federal towers. So with the infrastructure, we can do non-federal towers, and those are towers that FAA does not own because they don't have the operational accounts. So in smaller communities, if they don't have the operational account to meet the benefit costs, and they're not owned by FAA, but they're staffed by FAA, we can provide airport infrastructure grant money for that. But for the ones that are federally owned towers, it's a different organization that's running that program for $5 billion to kind of update those systems. Okay, next one. So this is a little bit about what's happening in California. I did a 10-year history, just so you can kind of get a snapshot of kind of what the state of California has gotten in their commercial service entitlements. So again, these are airports that have commercial service. And again, this is all by statute. So this is what you would have got. I mean, you got what you got in California, basically. So you can see how much you got total in passenger entitlements by statute, cargo entitlements. The next slide, and I think this one's pretty important. This is kind of what the general aviation, the smaller airports got in terms of entitlements. So one bucket is state apportionment, again, based on formulas. And we can kind of move that around in the FAA to different parts of the state, as long as it's a small enough airport. And then non-primary entitlements, which basically Congress grants up to $150 million, $150,000 rather a year, to smaller airports. And you see the totals there of what the smaller airports got in terms of entitlements. Okay. And that's going to take me to lost opportunities, which is the next slide. So what we've been seeing happening, and I have 10 years of kind of what's been happening with the non-primary entitlements. On the previous slide, we gave out about $190 million and over the past 10 years. And over the past 10 years, 40 million has been lost. And when I say lost, it means we can't use it. I can't use it somewhere else. It goes back to Treasury. The state of California just lost it. And what's happening there is that we have a lot of airports, smaller airports, that can't meet their share, their local share. So if we come in and say, here's a 90% grant or a 95% grant, if they can't spend the money, they can roll it over for up to 4 years. But then after that, if it doesn't get spent, it disappears. It's lost. This money has been lost. And this is what we want to try to turn around. And I want to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes too. If you go to the next slide, I put discretionary there because even though the state of California got $1.46 billion over 10 years, I know we can do better. But to do better, some things I think I would have some recommendations and some things that the state that you ought to consider, you and the other state transportation agencies ought to consider doing. And part of this is kind of understanding how the funding works. I come from the Midwest and I've worked with many, many states. And in most states that I've worked with, the state is prescriptive. So the state has their goals, they have their objectives. And then they come up and they have usually through a system plan, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. They basically say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is what we want to accomplish to meet these objectives. And then we work with the states with our federal money to try to align our money and our objectives with the state objectives. We need to see more of that in the state of California to improve this number. We also need to make sure that we don't have airports falling out. airports, they can barely afford their entitlements and a little bit of discretionary, even though they have projects and infrastructure needs that are greater than what we're given. So what we're seeing with this money here, we were able to reach some of the smaller ones, but it's been going mostly to the ones that can afford to match. I mean, and that's kind of what's been happening over the past 10 years. And that's what we'd like to try to work with you on to reverse. So I'm going to go this kind of quick in case you have some questions. If you go to the next slide, please. So I call this the opportunity for self-help. And I want to kind of focus on the California Aviation System Plan. And this came out of the executive summary. It's a really good system plan. I want to, first of all, say that. It does a really good job of laying out the vision for California. Well, where I think you might want to consider kind of going to the next step is to be a little bit more prescriptive on how you want to implement that vision. So I kind of highlighted in capital, in bold letters and red letters here on the screen. And this comes out of your executive summary. Some words that basically traditionally states review their airports collectively, describe their facilities, capacities as a system, blah, 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 blah. What that basically means is that in their system plan, they say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. And then they do some kind of an inventory of the state. They say, this is what we've got. This is where we're deficient. These are the unmet needs. These are where we want to apply these objectives. It's prescriptive. That's the missing piece. Because what's happening in reality in the 19 years I've been working in this job is when my staff meet with the airports, we're deciding where the money goes, and it's based on conversations with individual airports. We like to right size this. We'd like to right size it and have the state of California playing more of a role in that and helping not only set a framework for the airports to follow to meet a state plan and state objectives, but also help us, because to avoid risk and have an Uncle Sam come in and kind of be the decider of everything that's good for California, I mean, it really needs to come from the state. And that happens in other states that I've worked with more than it happens here. Now to get there, some things have to be said. It's one thing to have a plan that's actionable, and that's what I'm talking about, is trying to make it actionable. How do we make these goals actionable? How do we prescribe it? But the resources have to be there, because if, when we sit in the federal government with an airport and say, we want you to do something, we have to have money. Otherwise, they call it an unfunded mandate. We want to incentivize it. We want to support it. I think there's opportunities for the state to bring more to the table than it's brought, to kind of help supplement, not just to stop the bleeding from the non-primary funds that we're losing, but to also look forward and help the airport system in the state meet the state goals of being more community friendly, environmentally friendly, so on and so forth. So the last page I got here, last slide, just some recommendations. Because we view in the FAA, we view the system plan as a vision document, and I think the airport sponsors do as well. I mean, it basically says this is what's important to the state of California. This is where we want to target resources. I looked at the one that the state of Texas has. I mean, they went as bold as to say, this is our unmet need. It was a huge unmet need. It was a huge understanding that they weren't going to be able to get the money right away. So they prioritized in their system plan what they were hoping to get or trying to get, and they funded according to that. And we provided support to help them get there, especially when they align, which the California goals do align with the federal goals. So some of this is, some of the considerations is that I noticed that were kind of not really that obvious in the California plan was just minimum design standards. In many states, the state says, okay, we want certain airports to have certain airport facilities. So I'm just gonna say 5,000-foot runway, parallel taxiway, especially in rural areas, because they want to make sure that this is what you need to be competitive. And we have a thing in the aviation world. If you build a mall of road, you got a mile of road. If you build a mile of airport or runway, you can go anywhere in the world. So in many states, the state kind of prescribes or at least identifies system requirements that it hopes to meet. It's not telling communities you have to meet it, but this is what we need to have a robust community. And this is what we need to have a robust aviation system. So I think there's opportunities to kind of put that in there. And when we meet with the airports sponsors together, we can kind of help work with them. And the state has a say as to where wants to prioritize the money. Where you have environmental and quality objectives that require federal funding, prescribe it. You know, I mentioned earlier, we have money set aside in our discretionary pot for noise and environmental purposes. Now, some of it may not give you everything that you need, but for what we have, we could be more strategic about putting it where you think it needs to be if you were to identify target areas. I mean, to not do that means it's up to us in that individual airport, and they may not be thinking the way the state's thinking. So we're not really working as a system. So opportunity for you to kind of be a little bit more prescriptive in that regard. And then where there's unmet infrastructure needs, say it. We all understand that the need within the state of the United States is not, it's unmet. We understand, if you look at the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, which is our planning document that we give to Congress to try to get funding appropriated, I don't remember what the number is, but it's a heck of a lot more than $3.5 billion. So we inventory that, so Congress knows these needs are out there. And then they decide how much to give us, and then we decide how to apply it. Well, I think the state probably should consider doing the same thing, because I think what I'm really talking about is working together to kind of prioritize the resources that are available. And then where I have discretion to go back and seek more, because there's a purpose to it, that we work together to get there, versus what we have today, where it's basically my folks in the airport having these conversations. So those are three things that I think I just wanted to just leave you to kind of consider. We do want to work with you. We do want to partner with you. You know, I have personal reasons living in the state of California to see the state get what I believe it deserves. But some things have to kind of be put in place to get there. You have my personal commitment to build whatever relationship infrastructure is needed between the state and the federal government to get there. I did meet with, and I appreciate, Mitch, you invited me to this, but I met with CTC, KELSA, and Caltrans in January, just to talk about the vision of aviation for California. What is the vision? Okay, so how do we make it actionable? Okay, so how do we make it so that we can actually measure what's being done, keep it transparent, keep us all accountable to it? And I'm hoping I didn't insult anybody and I get a follow-up meeting, because I do want to continue working on that relationship. And I'm hoping I didn't just frustrate anybody here, and I hope I get a follow-up invitation for this group as well. But I do want to work with you, and I think it's a personal thing.
Great.
So with that, I want to end and just ask if there's any questions.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate all the information. I have to say, for myself, I had two emotions here. One was, it was heartbreaking to see the money that was being sent back, especially when you're talking about smaller airports that don't have the match and can't do the upgrades that they should. The second was, you really made us mad when you said Texas did something better than us. So, Mitch, what can we do?
First of all, thank you for coming, Mark, and it's nice to see you, Amy. To Mark's point about continuing this dialogue, one of the things we would like to do is see how we can have Mark back on a periodic basis, or if he chooses to send Amy or someone. So I think we love hearing from Vince, but I think it would be also nice to hear from Mark, hear from FRA and FTA in addition to Vince. Now maybe so, and Vince, we'll talk to you if you want to be first or second. We'll give you some. Okay, but maybe on a rotating basis. I have a question and then a few comments. The 40 million over 10 years, is that general aviation airports?
That's general aviation.
So what I think, we'll talk about the timing of when you come back, and maybe at the same time, we can ask Caltrans to report back on, first of all, on the funding. Are there any institutional barriers, or what can we do to help improve that? And the same question for those specific points you raised about opportunities to improvement. How can we as a state start moving towards that? I do want to point out, under Amy's leadership, Caltrans did the aviation system plan, which was the first one that had been, I don't know, maybe 10 years or something. I mean, it had been a long time. And so I got to say, something's better than nothing. And it was a great start, but we recognize we can improve on that. And I think we have a role. So let's figure out how we can kind of work there. And I really appreciate that you have 3 specific points. So we can figure out how can we improve in those areas, with Caltrans. And so maybe let's figure out the timing of the next commission meeting and give everybody some time to look into it.
Can I plant one seed though? So I shared the 40 million in AIP. My fear is that with Bill, with that money that they've allotted every year, somebody's going to smaller airports too. If they can't afford to match for AIP, we may see that number grow, because they may end up, a lot of the smaller ones may end up losing Bill money too. The difference between Bill and AIP is that after 4 years, the AIP goes to the Treasury. I can't do anything with it. Bill, I still can't do anything with that, but it at least goes back to the FA to get sent to other places that can use it.
Okay.
It may not be California though.
Right.
Yeah, and so one of the things we pride ourselves on as a state is how much we get in August redistribution, which is the highways. And we're ones who take advantage of other states who aren't prepared to use the money. I think we need to look at how we as a state can not be a donor in the aviation funds, but start moving towards being take advantage of other states who are not doing as well.
Thank you. So we're going to have 3 questions. We'll start with Commissioner Norton and go to Commissioner Gardino and then Commissioner Martinez.
This is where I get disinvited, right?
Thank you so much for your presentation. And I wanted to, as we had added in the report, we were talking about the addition of an emergence of air taxis as a new mode that anyone could start using, and wanted to know how you are going to integrate that as a transit mode and how the regulation of that is going to be worked into the system, especially as a lot of the urban air taxis are now talking about being fully EV and trying to look at how we regulate airspace in larger ways and make sure that we can distribute funds accordingly.
Yeah, so right now everything is going through the permitting process, the rulemaking process. Without sounding like a broken record, I'd rather throw the question back to you, because I believe that, again, with the system plan, you have an opportunity to identify. I can tell you the Bay Area, Southern California, I mean, those are just 2 natural areas where it makes sense to strategically incentivize industry for purposes that benefits all of us. I mean, whether it's reducing emissions for certain areas, whether it's sustainability, whether it's because of a need, there may be suburban areas. But I would say we're going to go through the process to permit the users, figure a way to enter them, but we don't prescribe where they go. They're going to go where the market takes them. I think where the state of California can do some self-help though, is again, if you're a little bit more prescriptive in how this builds into your aviation, your state aviation strategy, to kind of incentivize it, and we kind of work together on the infrastructure needs to kind of incentivize it. So I hate to throw it back to you, but I think we want to get away from Uncle Sam deciding where these things going. I want to work more towards you, with you, and finding ways to kind of incentivize what you want and where you want it. If that helps.
Thank you. Vice Chair Gardino.
Thank you, Chair Eager. Mark, again, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here. This has been very educational. When I first came on the commission in 2007, we had an aviation technical advisory committee, and I was appointed for those first 2 years as the commission's representative on that committee. And one of the goals was to make sure that there was outreach to all of our general aviation airports and to make sure we took full advantage of the funds available to us. I think over time that stopped functioning or stopped coming together. So one of the areas that I'd like to explore with our staff and the commission, and eventually you as well, is there a way that we rekindle some type of structure to make sure that we don't lose the opportunity to serve the general aviation needs of our state?
Okay. That's a great question, by the way. So when I started, I heard about that group and I committed to going, but I never got to it. If we restart it, I guarantee you that I'll be there. So I think if we want to maybe sit offline and maybe talk to some of the airport association groups, like Association of California Airports, which represent the smaller GA airports and smaller airports in California, we could probably figure out a way to kind of reconstitute that. And I would give you my commitment that FA would be at the table, and I would be there, and Amy would be there, and Amy would make sure I say the right stuff. But I do see the need. I mean, the intent is sincere. I'm watching these trends, and we need to reverse it. So I want to work together with you to do that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll move on to Commissioner Martinez.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mark, for your presentation. Very quickly, is this funding for private and municipal or public airports? That's my first question.
They're airports that are in the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems. They're mostly public use airports. There's a couple of them that are privately owned, but they're still public use. So to be eligible for this funding, you have to be in the NIPIAS.
And the second question, can some of this funding be used for some airports that are being closed that are municipal?
To, when you say used for being closed for?
Like there are some airports, for example, like Santa Monica Airport, and there's conversations about smaller airports in Los Angeles that are municipally held that looking to be closed. So as they go on that path, is there any funding available? Or is this just specifically to ensure that operations are running for those, some funding for capital and or operations?
Yeah, without sounding like I'm really selfish, we're here to kind of sustain the aviation system.
Yeah, I understand. I definitely understand, yes.
So we want to target areas, airports that are life support, that need support to help make them viable, that we're interested in partnering with you on. But the case of Santa Monica, for example, that went through some litigation. There's a settlement agreement.
Yes.
And I mean, they'd have to want to take a grant. We need a public sponsor to take a grant. They're not going to take a grant. We'd be happy to give them one if they wanted one. So that's a different conversation if that helps.
No, definitely. And I only ask that, as we speak about highways and the removal of some of those as pertains to equity and justice, there's the same conversations being had with airports as well. And so as we move towards, equity and justice, there's also this notion that we have to talk about belonging, and certain folks in communities don't feel like there's a sense of belonging because certain, land has been taken away from them, and no different than the conversation that we're having with freeways.
Right. That's a good point. Well, we want to work with the airports to make them good neighbors to the extent we can. And I understand that that's
we do too.
More possible in some places than others, but we certainly want to do everything we can to help them be good neighbors and work with the state to do that.
And I know I told you there were only 3 questions, but I lied. So I'm moving on to Commissioner Liu.
Great.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Thank you.
I'm surprised.
Yeah. Well, no, I got questions. The first question is, where'd you guys move to in El Segundo? Because, I know you're out of that building on aviation. Yeah. I live in the neighborhood. I think we should probably go to lunch, but where are you in El Segundo now?
So north of Rosecrans on aviation, it's a black building. It's near Alaska. It's been so long since I've been in the office. I forgot where I'm at.
Okay.
I think it's like Alaska and aviation. So it's northwest before we were.
I can walk to that.
Yeah.
That's from my house. So yes, we need to get together. I have lots of aviation questions. I'm not going to ask them all, but I do want to follow up on what Commissioner Martinez was saying, because when you made your presentation, I didn't hear anything that said, and the federal government put aside this money for equity issues at airports. And, we would love to see what opportunities there are, because, I do know that a lot of airports have a lot of impacts, disproportionate impacts on low-income communities and communities of color. And we would certainly look for and I think enjoy the opportunity to make some investments to address those issues.
Yeah, so just as mentioned earlier with highways, I mean, we're all kind of figuring out what that means.
Yeah.
I like to try to make things actionable. I mean, I like to kind of demystify what we're talking about, make it actionable. Now, before coming to California, I was in Chicago. And at the time, the state of Illinois was considered one of the more progressive aviation states. We worked together with them on a lot of pilot programs, and we were able to get them set up just to do a proof of concept for different things that were of interest to them. It wasn't equitable, but it was other stuff. I'd love to sit down with the state of California, but again, I would say to make this work, the state of California needs to bring some skin to the game too, though.
Yeah, I spent about 7 years on the LAWA Air Quality Source Apportionment Technical Advisory Group, trying to figure out how they could do that study and figure out where the problems were coming from and how they were impacting the surrounding community. And I mean, the conclusions were interesting, not too surprising in the end. It was really the cars and trucks going to and from the airport that were having the most direct impact on the lives and health of the surrounding community members. And so if there were ways that we could invest to lessen that or do comparable studies at other airports and then implement programs to actually address those issues, that would be, I mean, I think a really good use of money. And Fran and I have been sitting here gouging over at the fact that we left money on the table. We don't like that. So
Well, I like to take you up on that lunch and let's talk about that. And
Yes.
Frame it out a little bit.
Absolutely.
I'll bring my napkin.
In and out. We have a couple of in and outs right there.
One more question. Commissioner Falcone?
Thank you, Chair Eager. Let me try to frame my question. So I too am concerned about money left on the table. It's not like us. Are there opportunities for infrastructure for fuel alternatives? And are you seeing that as a trend at other airports? And then the second question I have is for those airports that are already getting grants, grant assurance airports, are they prioritized? Are they taking advantage of opportunities to, to continue to improve their airport operations or runways? So I know we have a few of them here in San Diego that are grant assurance airports that here and there get grants. Are those airports taking advantage? Because they're already getting grants of the capacity that is available.
Right. So let me go to the second question first, and I'm going to go to your first question. Taking advantage, yeah, effectively taking advantage. I think there's room for opportunity. Again, I think what we're having individual conversations with individual airports, and I don't really see the scene works. I don't see how it stitched together for like a statewide or even a regional purpose. So they are taking grants. Most of them are taking grants if they're allowed to take grants. But I think when we get to the point, when we get to an end state where, and again, that's why I think the state of California is so important. We get to an end state where there's a strategy behind the funding, whether it's an infrastructure strategy, whether it's an environmental strategy, whether it's an inclusion strategy, then I think we can kind of say, okay, we're accomplishing something. Otherwise, we're just kind of moving money around and things are getting built, but what does that really mean? And how does that really benefit the state of California? So I don't know if that holds, but that's kind of where I hope that we can get to, but they are taking advantage, but I think there's more. I think there's a missing piece, and I think the state of California is that missing piece to help get there. But again, I think for the state of California to have if you want the folks to listen to that, you're gonna have to have the resources. I mean, if the state's coming in and saying, we want you to do this, and then FAA says, yeah, we want to do that, and then the state can't give them assistance, particularly where they don't have the money to do it themselves. It doesn't work. So that's got to kind of come together. As far as the fueling, and I just want to kind of make sure you're aware of this, because this is like a new frontier for us. Some of you may or may not have heard about a new initiative. It's called EAGLE, Eliminating Aviation Gasoline Lit Emissions. So it's basically the FAA working together with government and industry stakeholders, implementing a multi-layered and collaborative strategy to reduce and safely eliminate the use of lidded aviation by the end of 2030 without adversely affecting existing piston engine aircraft. Today and tomorrow, there's a big symposium going on. Talk about this new eco initiative. I got my folks listening to it because I'm here. It's a new thing. There's a framework that's being developed. It's a partnership with industry, with the aviation groups, with a few opposition groups that have concerns about this, other federal agencies. And the goal, again, is to eliminate leaded aviation fuel by 2030. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the next 2 days kind of do in terms of mapping out kind of what the strategy looks like. But the general pathway that's kind of laid out is to build a business infrastructure and implementation. So again, how do you make it actionable? You got to have the business implementation, the business structure there, because we can talk about it, but we need the engines and the manufacturers to move towards that direction, like what was done with the automobiles. More on research and development, unleaded fuel testing and qualification, so it needs to get certified, and then the regulatory policy. So all of that's kind of being talked about today and tomorrow under this initiative that was announced February 23rd. And I think this is going to lead to a pathway to incentivize, kind of getting to your question, this being done by that time frame. So I think we're gonna have more to come, and if you invite me, I'm hoping that I can give you more updates.
I think so.
Thank you. We definitely will invite you. And obviously there was a lot of interest, a lot of great information. I'll know next time to take a break before your presentation. So thank you so much. And at that, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.